Getting started here, this is going to be a critical review of Persona 5 and its mechanics of the game. A couple main topics I want to cover. We want to talk about the SP management, the addition of the new damage types, gun, psychic, and nuke, the new combat feature of the baton pass. I'm going to have a review of the various party members that join you, as well as a small go over of the wild card and its effect on the game. So, on to the first topic of SP management. Doing some comparisons to the previous games, I can see that the max SP for the party members is much lower from start to finish for this game. On top of that, by removing the SP healing, such as the Vox that was available in Persona 4 or the recovery status at the base of Tartarus in Persona 3, SP management is a much bigger hurdle, especially at the beginning of Persona 5 in comparison to the previous games. Um, it seems to be the main crutch of the difficulty spike that happens from my observation, having played on the hard difficulty. This is why so many players seem to focus on getting the Doctor Confidant to either rank 5 or 7 for access to the SP adhesive specifically. Uh, 5 to get access to the adhesive, 7 to get the much needed discount since they're so expensive. The SP adhesive itself should have probably been better spread out, such as having access to the SP1 adhesive at a lower rank, and then the SP3 adhesive should have been accessed only at a higher rank. Probably would have spread the difficulty a bit. Having both SP or having all three SP adhesive 1, 2, and 3 accessible all at rank 5 um, isn't very good gating on access. Um, or just they may have put like a limit to the amount you could purchase to where they could sell out on the adhesive, so you'd only buy like maybe one or two of each one and had to divvy those out to the party members accordingly. Many players, myself included, use the SP adhesives for the majority of the game. Their addition to the game acts as an overpowered fix to the problem of SP resources being very limited. The only other main ways of accessing SP recovery is buying the vendor drinks, making coffee, curry, and then the much later access to Noir's Confidant, which gives you access to the gardening. That's only available for really the very end of the game. Um, Possibly they probably should have tried to work in Noir Confidant much earlier into the game, giving you access to the gardening sooner. Could have been another way to kind of alleviate this, but I really do feel a lot of emphasis of the difficulty of this game was entirely placed on SP management. All right, moving on to the next subject, I do want to discuss the new damage types. The addition of gun is great. I love it as it spreads out the physical damage types, so we're not in a situation of the trifecta that was in Persona 3 of slash, blunt, and piercing damage types, which kind of played out as a rock, paper, scissors. It was kind of annoying. But then you got Persona 4 where there's only the one physical damage type, and that was a little too boring. So having two different types, the regular physical attacks and then the gun damage, both servicing as your one or alternate physical methods, is a great addition. Unfortunately, I do feel like the gun is lacking in a skill list from the personas. There's a much smaller list of gun skills in comparison to the available physical skills in the game. In addition, the ammo limitations, especially early in the game, kind of end up in the same boat as SP, where it's more of a crutch and a limiting to artificially spike the difficulty. No ways to real effectively reload. You can eventually craft a ammo refill. That comes way too late as far as when you're able to access it for crafting, and then also just farming the materials for it and having to use your time to craft them. it just it's not very good. I really do think that they should have had some kind of reload command in battle where you could sacrifice a turn to reload it, possibly even working that as a skill access through the arcade kid's confidant, and having him be introduced maybe a little sooner in the story would have been a great addition to his confidant. Um, but it's a matter of taste. The having the two different element types of physical and gun to cover the physical damage types, I do believe is a great compromise without going back to the ridiculousness of Persona 3, but not being Persona 4's um, lack of creativeness with only one physical type. Now, when it comes to the two new elements, though, there's some good and bad here, so I'll go over both of them. It's a nice idea of having the two new elements. I do feel it makes the overall list of elements a little too much, considering now that there's 8 different elemental magic types. So the guessing game when fighting new personas is made a little more obnoxious. Um, Now, when dealing with enemies that don't have weaknesses, which you do run into a few of these, that's where Psychic, I feel, tends to shine. Being able to inflict status effects such as Sleep or Rage on many of the elemental resistant enemies, such as Anubis or the Oni, found in the third and fourth palaces, and then hitting them, following that up with a Psychic attack, was probably one of the main reasons why I got through hard as easily as I did. Um, just that damage combo, just Sleep Psychic, would wrecks most enemies. That technical damage boost is great. I feel that Psychic was definitely put in a good spot on that. Just I think a lot of players probably don't use the status effects in Psychic to that effect, but I guess they still like using Psychic for exploiting weaknesses, which of course is always good. Nuke, I feel, is kind of in a worse spot though. Most of the status effect spells usually have a corresponding boost. They have higher accuracy, so it's easier to land the status effect. Nuke relies on getting the burn, freeze, or shock effect on, and without the corresponding boost, and even with the corresponding status boost, the burn boost, freeze, or shock boost, the chance of getting one of those three on is still kind of low, and I feel like the technical damage boost that Nuclear gets on top of that doesn't feel that strong. At least not. It doesn't feel as strong as comboing Psychic onto a sleeping or raged enemy. So I do feel Nuke's kind of in a weird spot to where it just doesn't quite do enough. And then this, of course, has made even more of an issue when you're fighting any of the major bosses of the game, as they're 100% immune to all magic types. Therefore, Nuke and Psychic at that point are just, if you want to avoid physical damage or just want to do magic damage, that's pretty much what they end up getting regulated to. Which is pretty much what every other element does in those boss fights, but it's kind of one of the main effects to it. So not having the secondary strategy to those elements kind of takes away from them, I think. But that's more of a complaint on the bosses as a whole having no weaknesses. All right, next subject, I do want to go over the Baton Pass. First off, the Baton Pass is a great addition to the game. I love it. It makes the teamwork aspect of the party have a much greater feeling and impact. Like you really feel like these party members are working together when you're chaining those baton passes. Um, you do run into some issues though when you get the enemies that have no weaknesses, as at that point you're pretty much relying on crits, which is kind of random chance to get a baton pass. Maybe you should guys could consider maybe adding a new weakness type that doesn't knock the enemy down, nor deals the bonus damage. Something like instead of like a knock down, have like a knock back weakness where it only gets the effect of triggering the baton pass without dealing extra damage or no knockdown, just does a baton pass. That's it, nothing else. Or maybe having additional effect on some of the skills to where they'd have a chance to trigger a baton pass, regardless of get scoring at critical hit. A great example of this is the link attack system that was done in the Legend of Heroes Trails of Cold Steel 1 and 2. So that's just an idea. I do wish there were some more skills added that benefited from the baton pass. Currently, there's the touch and go and soul chain skills. Maybe adding some more, and maybe putting some of those on the party members so they can help each other out with baton passing to each other. Would have made the aspect feel strong. Maybe could have been a little overpowered, and I can understand why maybe you guys didn't do that because it would have made things a little overpowered, baton passing like crazy. But to counteract that, you could have very easily just lowered the damage bonus that corresponds with the baton pass to compensate, as you would be getting additional effects and extra turns. All right, next topic I want to cover is the party members. So I feel like the party members aren't as useful this time around. Not one of your party members truly gets a unique skill. Persona 3 is kind of lacking on this. Only Junpei gets a unique skill, and that's the Spring of Life, which is basically a Regenerate 4 passive, which is kind of nice, but not all that fancy. Persona 4 Golden specifically made sure that each one of the extra party members you had gained access to a completely unique skill that they only had. It was only available via their Ultimate Persona fusion, which is pretty much at the end of the game, but they were there, and I like that they did add a unique skill that only they could do. Because I do feel Joker and the wild card's a little, a little, way overpowered. So having each party member having something special that they could do that Joker could not would make them feel a lot more special. I really do feel that each party member needs to be able to carry its weight in a way that maybe Joker's not able to do. Would make them feel a lot more important to the fights. Too often I see some videos, and I myself have done, where it's easier to do certain fights with Joker alone instead of bringing the party members, because the party members, in some instances, especially on hard and merciless, can actually be considered dead weight, which is kind of a problem. You don't really want party members feeling like dead weight. Um, the party members have so many disadvantages they have to deal with. They just generally have lower stats than Joker. They always have their weakness. Yes, they do get the evasion skill, which helps, but the weakness is still there. They can still get exploited. They can still get killed. The best thing about them, of course, is that they'll protect Joker in a pinch, but that kind of makes them feel like they're more bodyguards than party members. So that's kind of a weird way to view it. I'll briefly go over the different party members, how I feel about them. You got Skull, good tank, good damage dealer. He's got high HP, high endurance. He's got the attack buff and the charge skill. Plus, he does get access to God's Hand and Aghanistra. So he's got great damage potential, but he's kind of one-dimensional. I mean, he's just there to buff attack and then hit hard. Like that, he doesn't really. He's not very flexible with his play style. Of course, Joker can do all of this better than him with higher stat personas and much better attack damage skills than Skull has access to. Next up, we got Panther. She serves as a good all-rounder as far as magic users go. She's got access to high power fire magic. She's got access to the focus ability or concentrate to power up her spells. She's got the attack debuff, which was a great godsend when you're going through on hard difficulty. Like, I needed that all the time. The single target healing with Diarahan, and the status effects with Sleep and Tentrafu, or Confusion. Gives her some good effects to combo with Joker as far as Psychic and comboing with Haru. But again, like, it's the same situation as Skull. Like, just Joker can basically do all that and more. Next we got, and then of course a big problem that she runs into is, especially if you get the Blazing Hell skill on her, SP management becomes a huge problem for Panther as she will burn through her SP. She doesn't get access to built-in Invigorate skills unless you have the SP adhesive taking up her accessory slot. She does not get Spell Master, so she doesn't have any way to reduce her spell cost like the main character can. So SP management becomes a huge problem with Panther, where Joker doesn't really have an issue with that. Next up, we got Fox. Fox is he's kind of in a bad spot, honestly. He's good for most of the game, especially with the auto accuracy and evasion up. Like he's just in a really good spot, like early and mid game. Just the high agility. He's got good dodge chance. He's got good physical damage output, but he does eventually fall behind Skull. He doesn't have the same tankiness. The evasion's good, but when he does get hit, it's gonna hurt, and he can very easily get killed because of that. Um, and then with the auto speed and the speed buff, I mean, he kind of falls behind once Joker gets the auto Sukakaja, the automatic AoE speed buff at the start of fights. If you put that on a persona right at the start of the game fight, that covers you for 3 turns. And if you know what you're doing, most regular fights are pretty much done in those 3 turns, anyways. So a lot of his perks, a lot of the stuff that makes him stand out as a party member, like definitely falls off near the end, and he just doesn't really have any way to. And like his best skill setup is the baton pass skills, like Deadly Fury. But when you start facing enemies with no weaknesses or bosses, and you can't get those baton passes, it just limits what he can do. So next up, we'll talk about Mona. I really don't like Mona's skill setup. Just the main healer is really boring as a skill setup. Doesn't bring a lot of damage. He does get the respective boost in amps for the wind spells. The wind spells don't have any extra effects. They do get a tiny technical boost on burning damage, but nuke's still better. He's just in a terrible spot. He just doesn't have a good skill setup. He doesn't get the AoE debuff until really late, and it's the AoE one. He doesn't ever get the single target. Having Lucky Punch and Miracle Punch, they're useful when you run into enemies with no status effects, but just the damage on Miracle Punch is terrible. It tends to miss a little more frequently than some of the other skills. I do feel like Noir's one-shot kill, or some of the setups that Joker can do with Apt Pupil, is better than using Mona. Just and the low HP on Mona. All too often, it's carrying dead weight, how I feel, at least on the higher difficulties. Probably players on normal don't really notice that much of as an issue, and Mona makes a good healer to just always heal up every turn. So you kind of feel like everyone else can just do what they want as long as Mona's healing you, but on the higher difficulties, just Mona's not that useful. Uh, Next up, we got Queen, and this is where Mona kind of falls short, is because of Queen. Queen has a great skill up on the higher skill set on the higher difficulties, but it's a boring skill set. Um, Pretty much use her for the defense buff and the AoE heal for the majority of fights. She doesn't really do a lot else. Her physical skills cap at medium damage type, which is really low for the end game. Her nuke spells, again, I've kind of gone over nuke. They're kind of lackluster in comparison to some of the other options. Um, it's good, for, of course, for the weakness exploiting like any other element, but outside of that, it's not particularly useful. Atlas did give her a bunch of really damn good gear, though. Gives her ridiculous stats, the high crit rate on her auto attacks. Um, as Epic Name Bro put it, she's beefy, but that's about it. Now, the more two interesting party members go over last year. We got Noir and Crow. Noir is probably the most interesting party member and the one I enjoyed the most having in the party. She's got like one of the most diverse skill setup, having the reflect damage spells, the instant status healing. She gets Heat Riser, which is great. She couples very well with putting Heat Riser on Joker and just letting Joker go to town. Um, so she works as a very good support. She's also a bit of a wrecking ball with the gun skills. Getting the cripple and snipe with triple down is great for AoE clearing, and of course, one shot kill to just completely wreck a single target and get that crit for a baton pass. So Noir's kind of a wrecking ball, and I love her for it. She's really good on that aspect. Of course, all the setup that she has, of course, Joker can do better, but I do feel she's in a better spot than some of the other party members. Uh, Her psychic skills with the technical damage boost on sleeper rage enemies is freaking fantastic. Absolutely wrecks some of those non weakness typed enemies you run into. So I really like Noir. She's a great party member in comparison to a lot of the others. Last up we got is Crow. Not gonna go over Crow too much for story reasons. Another strong ally, just like Noir, has the uncommon weakness of Curse. So he's a bit more useful in a lot of the other fights. You don't really run into his weakness too much in the time that you have access to Crow. Um, his access to two elements of having both Curse and Bless puts him in a unique spot over the other party members who are limited to only a single element. He does also get Debilitate, which is fantastic, but he doesn't stick around. So, yeah, Crow's in a pretty good spot. Not the most flexible set, but a little more flexible than some of the other party members. So I will give bonus points to Crow for that. And this all goes into kind of one of my main points. The wild card is just too overpowered. Like I get it, it's the wild card and like the whole line infinite possibility. But the fact that you can pretty much do everything better compared to everybody else is a bit ridiculous. The ability to have no weaknesses, the access to the null and repel skills that can be carried over and make personas even more ridiculously resistant is it's kind of overkill, I think. I'm not sure how they feel that's appropriate. It's interesting that the resist skills, the ones that made you half resistant, seem to have been removed from skill set. I think there's like one thing that gets like a resist fire, and I think that's about it. But like the resist skills were pretty much removed, so you can't like. And I think that's kind of the opposite of what they should have done. They should have just left the null and repel to just the the default resistances of the different personas, and then you could inherit like a resist. But being able to resist or inherit a null or repel is a bit overpowered. It just makes Joker way too tanky. And putting on some of the unique skills that only Joker. I mean, the majority of the skills in the game itself are completely and utterly unique to Joker. You got stuff like Spellmaster, Firm Stance, Arms Master, all the regenerate and invigorate lines. The spell master, like, I mean, it's kind of ridiculous, like the amount of different skills that just Joker has access to and none of the other party members have a hope to get. And some of those are the best skills in the game, and then Joker can stack them on top of each other and make some absolutely ridiculous personas. Like, I get it, infinite possibility, but for game balance, infinite possibility is not a very balanced game. So with that in closing, like I just wanted to go over that, my thoughts on the game. Persona 5 is a fantastic game. I enjoyed every minute of it, start to finish. I don't want this to be a video to where it feels like I'm completely trashing on Persona 5. It is a great game. I just feel that there some better fine tuning of some of the mechanics and some better balancing would help as far as difficulty, not just in the beginning of the game where the game has the same problem that Persona 4 has of being more difficult at the beginning of the game and becoming a cakewalk by the end of the game. I feel like there could be some better balance to make the early part of the game a little easier while making the ending part of the game more difficult and make pressure you to actually use all the power of the wild card to actually get through things because of the potential you have. Oh, and don't get me started on Yoshitsune. God damn it, he breaks the game 8 ways to Sunday. It's ridiculous. Why did you even allow that shit in the game again?